Meillä on ilo pitää vieraanamme tänään Bob Fuuta, joka on China Aidin johtaja. Mr. Bob Fu, you are the founder and the president of China Aid Association. You are also a former member of Communist Party in China. You are a former student leader in Tiananmen Square in China. You are also a former prisoner because of your Christian work in China. Mr. Fu, you are very welcome to Finland and the Voice of Martyrs office.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. China is growing and developing and also increasingly opening and participating on the global market. Recently in G20 summit was held in China. Does this mean religious freedom is also increasing in China?
Well, the answer is unfortunately no, and I wish that with the world G20 leaders had gathered in China would result in more opening, and unfortunately from all the indications both before the G20 summit and after, we did not see any signs of increasing opening on religious freedom. And we actually have seen in the past 2 years at the very province where the G20 is held, over 2,000 churches' crosses were forcefully demolished, and over 50 of them were even totally destroyed. And a number of believers were even beaten up, and pastors who opposed this barbaric, forceful destruction of crosses were arrested, detained, and some even sentenced to 14 years imprisonment. Mm-hmm. And so we have seen after the G20 recently, in the past week or so, the Chinese government proposed a new version for the so-called regulation on religious affairs management. And according to this revised version proposal, it shows the government actually even wants to increase its control and regulate and even banning the independent house church movement. Mm-hmm. And those who have been leading the house church leaders are subject for more severe scrutiny and more severe persecution. Mm. So unfortunately, it's not increasing the openness.
What would you say? Why does the government care if people go to church in China?
I think number one, why the Chinese government really care about the increasing number of Christians goes to church is because this is still an atheistic communist government. So as you just mentioned, yes, in the past 30 years there has been dramatic economic growth and a global market opening, and that's why Chinese Communist Party call it a market economy with Chinese characteristics. Mm-hmm. Yes, maybe in the economic field, a small group, percentage of Chinese citizens, most of them are Communist Party officials or their sons, daughters, in-laws, or their affiliates, got really rich. And China, is the second largest country with the largest number of billionaires now globally, and there are a lot of high, scrappers, buildings and infrastructure, very impressive to the world. But on the other hand, the Chinese characteristics means the continuation of the political dictatorship, the continuation of the lack of freedom on freedom of press, freedom of association, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly. Most fundamental, freedoms are still even getting worse. Actually, I mean, you have like an online citizen journalist in Xinjiang last year received 19 years imprisonment for posting 6 articles in overseas, online platform. Mm-hmm. And you have have house church leaders receive, these 6 years and 7.5 years as late as August this year for helping the house church members.
Okay. Many Finnish Christians are praying for Chinese Christians, especially those who are held in prison because of their faith. And they send cards and letters with encouraging words and pray for them. And you yourself have been in prison because of your faith. What would you like to say to Finnish Christians? How can they pray for these Christians who are in prison?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Maybe I should add one more sentence for the previous question about why the Chinese government are concerned. I think really there is a grave misunderstanding by the Chinese Communist Party leaders about the nature of Christianity. Somehow in the party leadership, they still thought, the Christianity is a political threat, and the more Christians there are, the more kind of a social or political threat to their regime. And in the Chinese Christian circle, we call it one more Christian, one less criminal. One more church, one less prison. Yes. Actually, Christians are the best citizens of the civil society, the best citizens to care about the poor, needy, and vulnerable. So there shouldn't be that kind of fear. And unfortunately, it's a part of the spiritual warfare. The darkness does not, like the light, and they hate the light. I think that's, the bottom, fundamental reasoning. And as the matter of, how to pray for those persecuted brothers and sisters, as I just mentioned, many are still in prison. So we should, number one, pray for those, the family prisoners. Many of them, had suffered a lot when one, usually the father or the mother, were imprisoned for the gospel. And so we pray that, they will continue to worship the Lord with a stronger faith, knowing that God must have a better purpose, and really, according to the Apostle Paul, is rejoice in their suffering, and to pray. Number two, for the prisoner themselves. When they are in prison, many experience, suffering, beaten up, torture, and abuses. Like the church in Guizhou, the largest house church, that since last December had been wiped out, and the pastors recently are facing trial. We already know, like one pastor, Pastor Yang Hua, had been physically and mentally abused already. Yes. So we pray that despite of this persecution, they can continue to count the grace of the Lord, to sustain their faith, and also even more in their prison, they can still be light and salt to other fellow prisoners, and to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with the fellow prisoners. Yes. And I think we also need to pray for the Chinese government, for the persecutors. I mean, one of the beautiful things happens in China, the persecution, of past 60 years is, yes, the persecution has never stopped, and yet those who are persecuted, the Christians, has not, held resentment, hatred. Yes. Instead, they are praying for them, they're blessing them, they're really forgiving them.
It's very important.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
I think that's very important to pray. The Chinese government leader's heart could be softened.
Yes.
Could have a better understanding.
Okay, thank you. We will pray for them. Thank you very much for the interview, Mr. Fu, and may God bless you.
Thank you, my pleasure.